Then queen d2. Rook f6. Queen c5. Rook f1. Queen b5. Rook b1. Bishop c6. Rook up d4. cb2. Rook c4. Bishop b7. King g1. Queen g5. Bishop f5. Oh, bishop f5. Queen d3. Queen f2. Queen d3. Queen f1. Queen d2. Queen f2. Queen d1. Queen f1. Queen Queen f1. King f1. a5. King d1. Bishop a6. Rook c2. Bishop d3. Rook b2. Rook bishop e4. And black victor. The next game. Rook f6. Queen c5. Rook f1. Queen b5. Rook b1. Guys. Queen d1. Queen f1. Queen f1. King f1. And it's done. Rook f6. Queen c5. Rook f1. Queen b5. Rook b1. Rook d4. And it's the same. King g2. f6. Queen d3. Rook b8. Rook e h1. Rook h8. Rook h4. Queen b5. Rook c1. It's over. h4. Next position. h4. Rook g7. Bishop d1. Rook c7. h5. c5. Queen f3. Queen e6. d c5. Rook c5. h g6. Rook g6. queen h5, rook g2, rook g2, king h8, bishop e2, rook c7, bishop d3, rook g7, bishop f5, queen f7, queen f7, rook f7, bishop e6. So, and rook g7, bishop g5, bishop rook c7. And here, if rook takes on g5, then it's met. So guys, queen g2, king g2, rook h2, king f3, f, king f1, then rook f2 met, king f3, rook f2, king g4, knight e5, king g5, bishop f6, king h5, rook h8, and it's met. Here, queen h7, king h7, rook h5, king g8, knight g6, queen g2, rook g2, rook f3, rook h3, king f7, rook f8, and it's mate. Knight f4, knight f4, queen c3, knight e2, check, king h1, knight c3, knight takes c3, f5, g takes f3, queen takes f3, and it's black who's winning. Queen c3, knight e2, check, king h1, knight c3, knight takes c3, f5, g takes f3, queen takes f3, and it's black who's winning. He takes f3, queen takes f3, and it's. So guys, going into the next position, it's white to move, bishop e8, knight e8, king g5, bishop takes e4, rook f8, and it's mate. So moving on to the next position, rook h1, king takes h1, knight g3, f takes g3, queen g2, king takes g2, stalemate. Rook g6, g3, g6, targeting this. Mate. g3, bishop takes f1, rook takes f1, knight d2, bishop takes e4, knight b3, knight takes b3, queen d1, d takes e4, queen takes b3, and black is winning. bishop f6, knight f4, rotating, bishop f6, targeting, bishop 5, and bishop g7 simultaneously, knight f4, attack, knight h5, knight h6, king g8, king h8, queen e5, queen takes e5, knight takes e5, bishop takes e5, f6, bishop takes f4, g takes h6, bishop takes h6, rook b8, bishop d5, b takes d5, e takes d5, rook c8, rook takes f6, rook takes c3, rook e f1, rook g8, rook f8, rook c8, rook into c8, rook takes c8, rook f8, rook into f8, bishop into f8, king g8, bishop e7, king f7, d6, king e6, king f2, king d5, king e3, king c4, g4, 2 versus 1, 2 versus 1, king c2, king c3, g5, king c2, h4, king b2, h5, king a2, g6, h g6, h cross g6, a5, g7, a4, and queen, king b2, bishop f6, king b1, and it's white who is winning the game. And here's our next game. Rook a8, rook takes a8, queen a2, rook a2, and it's stalemate. Queen g5, queen g5, bishop takes g5, king takes g5, h4, rook h2, and rook h5, mate. Knight d2, rook d2, rook e1, king g1, and rook g1, it's a mate. Rook e7, brilliant. Bishop d5, knight f5, e5, king h2, rook e7, f e7, knight e5, e takes d8, rook takes d8, knight takes h6, bishop takes g7, bishop g7, bishop takes e5, bishop takes e5, g3, rook f8, f4, bishop 4, f5, rook f6, queen e8, king g7, knight g4, rook f5, queen d7, rook f7, queen takes d6, bishop b7, queen h6, king g8, queen g5, king f8, queen d8 check, queen g7, h4, bishop e4, h5, bishop f5, queen g5 check, h7, queen f4, bishop g7, knight e3, bishop h6, queen c4, king g7, knight g4, bishop g4, queen g4, king g8, king h8, queen g6, h7, queen e8, king g7, queen e7, king g8, queen g5, rook g7, queen a5, rook g5, queen g8 check, king h7, queen e7, rook g7, queen e5, 4, king g8, a4, rook g5, queen e8, king h8, a4, bishop e7, bishop g7, a5, rook a5, queen g6, king h8, h6, bishop e5, b4, rook a3, queen e8, king h7, queen e5, king h6, b5, rook f5, queen d6, king h5, queen c5, king h6, queen b6, check, king g7, king g5, queen takes a5, king f5, a7, king e4, a8, queen, king d3, queen f3, queen a2, king c2, queen a2 check, king c1, queen f1, mate. Queen g6, g6, h6, rook h3, mate. Queen h3, king g1, rook e5, rook d5, knight d5, queen d2, knight e3, queen e3, rook into e3, f into e3, rook b8, b3, queen g3, king f1, g5, rook d2, and rook e8. Black wins. Bishop f3, moving on to the next position. Bishop f3, bishop into f3, bishop e5, threatening mate on h2 by queen. So bishop f4, blocking it, blocking it. Queen, bishop f4, queen d6 check. No other way to save it. Yeah, c takes d6, h3, queen h3, king g1, and queen h2, mate. Rook g3, rook g3, threatening queen h1, king h1, and rook h6, mate. Wait a minute, guys. So, guys, okay. Rook d6, rook into f3, rook d6, rook d8, queen d8, knight into e5, queen d5, knight into g6, h into g6, gf3, queen f3 check, rook d2, king g7, h4, queen h5, king g1, f3, rook g3, f4, rook into f3, queen into f3, a4, queen d4, king f1, f3, a5, king f5, and king g1. But then we have the move queen b1 coming, king h2, queen f1, and a mate on g2. You can move like h5, then queen g2 mate. Moving on to the next position. Your black to move bishop a4, bishop e3. Here, black is trying. Yeah, as it is in here, he wants to take this bishop, as we can't take with a pawn. Then, so attacking his rook on b3, on c5, he plays bishop e3, then he plays Another black plays another fantastic move, bishop h6. Then it's 6. India's not another choice but to move on king e1. Bishop takes b3, c takes b3, bishop takes e3, knight c6, and rook c6, queen f8, rook a6, king c2, queen a2, rook d6, rook a3, rook d3, bishop d4, rook d1, knight d3, queen f7, bishop g7, e5, rook a5, f4, knight f4, queen c4, rook e5, g3, rook e2, queen e2, knight e2, king b2, knight d4, rook e1, queen d2, king e3, then queen g2, king d3, queen f3, rook a3, queen f1, king d1, 2, bishop h6, pinning the rook here on e3, g4, trying to give g5, but then we need to check, making use of the pin on e3. He cannot play rook e2, king e, king c1, and queen c2. Mate. So moving to the next position, knight d7, g5 check, h takes g5, queen takes g5 check, king b2, g6, knight d5, a5, queen e3, rook d8, a3, queen e3, rook takes e3, king g7, rook d e1, g5, and it's white who is winning. Wait, guys, I'm coming. Queen f6, king d7. Moving on to the next position, bishop f3, knight d7, rook a1, queen c1, knight d7, gx f3, queen h5, king f1, queen h1, king e2, rook into c1, bishop c2, rook h2, rook c8, and it's king g7. Black wins the game. Moving on to the next position, it's white to move. Rook h6, rook b6, on the move. Rook takes b6, queen takes b6, rook e4, queen b8, f4, queen c8, g5, rook e8, queen d4, queen g4, and white is winning here because he can give rook a7 and it's a mate trade at c7. Moving on to the next position, it's black to move. Knight, rook f3. Its idea is to play rook f3, g takes f3, and knight f3. And it's a mating attack. G takes f3, knight takes f3, queen takes f3, queen takes f3, bishop c8, e4, bishop g4, queen f6, rook b1, queen c3, c5, dc5, rook c1, and black is winning here with a queen up. Moving on to the next position, it's white to move. f6, rook takes f6, knight e4, knight d7, c4, queen e5, knight takes f6, knight takes f6, queen takes e5, d takes e5, rook f3, e4, d takes e4, e5, knight f2, bishop e6, h3, bishop f7, rook d1, rook c8, g4, bishop g6, king g1. Avoid, avoid. Knight e4, knight e4, bishop e4, trapping the rook. King g1, bishop h7, rook d6, and white is clearly winning with a exchange up. Ano? Hmm? Moving on to the next position, it's black to move, queen d2, king b1, queen b2, rook into b2, rook d1, king c2, rook d2, king b1, rook b2, and it's mate. Then it's moving to the next position. It's bishop e6, rook takes d4, rook f4, rook takes f4, queen d6 check, targeting the f4 rook here. Rook f4, it's a double attack. So King a5, 27, 27, queen c7, queen f4, queen c5, queen f8, king c6, queen a3. Moving on to the next position. It's happening. Guys, please wait. So, so yeah, guys. Yeah, queen h6. So it's why to move, and it's queen h6. The move is queen h6, knight f6, queen f6, it takes f6 because none other choice. And if he plays bishop f6, then I will play bishop f6 to target queen queen g7 mate. And then he has to play. Then at that moment also he has to play this move. So he plays it at first without losing the bishop. Queen f6, bishop h7, king h8, bishop f6, bishop takes f6, bishop g6, and you can surely see the mate here as he has to move king g8, we will move king a queen h7, and he has to move from g8 to f8, and we will play our last move queen f7 mate. So we are moving on to the next position. Bishop takes g6, it's quite a move, and the first move is bishop takes g6, targeting. He has to move. If he plays h takes g6, then he has to. Then white will play h7 and h8 queen, and if he plays f takes g6, then white will play f6 and f8. Uh, it's a queen 2. So black has played, but black has played h takes g6, rook b8. It's a fascinating move because white is trying not trying black not to give rook a8 so that he can stop the white pawn to go to promote to queen, as black has to move king b8 now. King b8, now white plays h7, then king c7 and h8 queen. You can see it's a purely winning game for white, and it's rook a8. If black plays rook a8, then queen g7, bishop e8, then g4. You can play g4. In this way, we can slowly, gradually, we will win this game. So moving on to the next position. This is white to move, and white will first play bishop takes g8. This is a you will tell me why are you showing this position? It's white winning already, but there's a tactical idea here. Bishop takes g8, king b8, knight c6, targeting it's a double attack and or a fork you can tell. So b takes c6, queen a6, queen f6, bishop e6, targeting bishop c8, targeting what happened? Targeting uh, targeting bishop c8 and queen b7 and queen b7 checkmate. So right, but black plays queen h8 to prevent bishop c8, prevent bishop c8. White plays rook a8, queen takes a1, queen takes a1, king b7, queen a4, king b8, and now, we, though here it is played bishop d7, you can see this move. I will show another variation to you now. You can play bishop d7, f3, he takes c6, fg2, king g2, h5, and queen a8 mate. But here you can also play queen a6 like the other position, where in this position where I had told you that bishop c8 and queen b7 bet. We can Here we can play like that too. Queen a6. Now he can black can give any move, bishop c8, and the move later, queen b7 mate. So moving on to the next position, it's black to move and it's black who is winning the game. Rook c4, king d2, and if white cuts this c4 rook, then black can give then black can cut this rook with b or d. It's his profit. So white plays king d2, d6, d4, bishop g5, b4, a b4, rook a2, king e1, f5, rook g1, knight g5, rook g5, rook into b4, rook d2, rook a into b2, rook into b2, rook into b2, rook g3. As you can see that it's black who is winning because of pawn advantage. So king takes c5, rook h3, h5, rook g3. It's a natural move, but uh, white is trying to cut this g6 pawn, but black has this rook b6 to protect this g6 pawn and make this passer promote into a queen. So f4, white is trying to take his rook out of this mess of double pawns and these bad pawns can really see. King c4, rook a3, rook b1, and black is winning here because king d2, rook b2, king e1, and here d3 is completely winning for black because if white plays rook a6, then uh, black can play king c3. If he plays rook g6, then d2, king e2. So guys, in this way, we can win the game. So moving on to the next position, rook into e4, f into e4, e7, rook f e8, bishop e3, queen b4, rook c4, queen a3, rook queen b1, bishop h6. It's a good move. Rook a4, queen takes a4. He has to take this because his queen is trapped. Bishop a4, bishop e3, bishop c4 check, doing a check and then taking the bishop f into e3. It's a type of development you can still. Rook c8, bishop e6, attacking the rook on c8, rook c7, queen b6, rook c into e7, bishop c4, king h6, queen d6, king g7, h4, h6, bishop b3, king h7, queen f6, rook g7, and it's white who is winning the game. So guys, wait for a minute to bring me to let me bring my charger of my laptop because the charge is over. So guys, I'm back. We will end this class after 1 hour complete, and then you can see in this channel only I will play games in leeches and I will be in live too. So moving on to the next position. It's white to move and white plays rook f6, bishop king h7, and if black mistakenly plays bishop f6, then white gives the brilliant move. Not brilliant, you can say, but it's a common move. Queen takes f6 and threatening queen g7 mate. King h7. So black is king h7. Bishop takes d5. Bishop takes f6. Queen takes f6. Rook g8. Rook d3. You will say, why didn't black play rook king h6? Instead of playing rook g8, why didn't he play king h6? So see, king 8, if he plays king h6, then white will play rook d3, rook, followed by rook h3, and it's a mate. Black can't defend it in any way. So black plays rook g8 and keeping the white bishop as a cover. But then white plays rook d3, black plays queen d7, and now white is removing his bishop which was acting as his cover. Now black plays g5, rook h3, but now queen takes h3, g takes h3, but you can see white is winning because he has a queen and two bishops, and black has only two rooks and he can't do anything with it. Then also black fights to in the game and he plays rook a f8, queen f5 check, rook g6, bishop f7, rook f7, queen takes f7, rook g7, queen f5, rook g6, bishop b4, threatening the d6 pawn. Threatening the d6 pawn, and then he would probably play e5, bishop takes e5, so king h6, so that he doesn't fall into the pin, and white can't play bishop d6, taking the pawn, queen f8, king h7, queen f7, king h6, bishop d6, rook d6, queen f8, king h7, and queen d6. King g7, queen e7, king h6, queen takes a7, king g6, queen e7. So you can see it's white who is winning the game as he has got queen, role, queen, and 4 pawns up. So moving on to the next position, uh, can play knight to e4 until it's not knight to e4, it's knight, it is in a d line and it's in a 2 file. So knight to e4, knight e8, queen g8, knight f6, king h8. He can't play bishop f6 because of the pin on g file. King h8, knight takes h8, g8, e2, king f2, e3, king e2, king e1, king g8, queen d8, check, king h7, queen a8, e4, queen a3, d2, king takes e2, d1, queen, rook. You can also make queen, no problem, but then also it's cut by the king. Uh, E takes f3, g takes f3, king g8, queen b3, king h8, queen f7, king f7, king e2, h5, king takes e3, king h8, f4, h5, king e4, bishop h6, queen takes g6, bishop g7, queen e8, king h7, queen f7, king h8, f5, bishop e1, f6, bishop takes f6, king f5. You can say queen takes f6, but king f5 is threatening king g6 and queen h7 mate. Like this is king g6 and queen h7 mate. And if we give queen f6, then it would be a long time to mate black. So taking the shortest route, he plays king f5, black plays bishop e5, king g6, and do not mistakenly take this bishop because it's a stalemate. The black king can't move anywhere because of the queen. So it's a blunder. So give king g6, bishop f6, and mate on e8 plus h7. So moving on to the next position, bishop e4, rook h3, rook c2, rook c2, b3, king a1, bc2, f3, bf5, rook h1, bishop g4, fg4, queen b3, rook c1, rook c8, g5, king b7, g6, rook c7, queen e1, h3, e4, a5, and queen g1, rook g7, e takes d5. You can see the white rook on c1 is standing there as a hostage because he can't move, or else there is c1, queen f1, king a7, queen f2, queen d3, rook takes c2, queen takes g6, queen f8, and queen takes c2. And you will say white cannot and black wins. You can say white can take queen g7, but if he takes, then king b6, then king b8, and there is a pass pawn for black so that he can win, like h2 and h1 is queen. So moving on to the next position, it's white to move and white plays bishop f6, threatening a mate on g7. Black has to take, forcefully take f6, bishop and f6. So he takes g takes f6, rook f3, and white threatening to take, give rook g3 and a mate on g8 by queen f7 and queen g8 or rook g8 mate. So black plays queen e7, protecting f7, white plays rook g3, king h8, queen h6, knight g6, rook h3, threatening mate on h7, knight f8, rook f1. So you can say what happens in this position. Black is a piece up. So, my dear friend, white is trying to attack rook f1, rook f3, rook f g3, and a mate on g7. White can't play knight g6 because there is a mate on h7, and if nothing happens, then there is a mate on g7 plus h7. So white wins in this position. So guys, it's almost an hour and I'm ending this stream now. You can watch my stream on my games, and that's all for today. Goodbye.